Conference realignment is back in the news, and we're back on the Big Mountain, where we focus on the Big Ten and the Mountain West.
Yeah, it's good to have you again. I am JY, and this is my good friend Steve, and I know Steve has an update for us, specifically regarding the ACC and the Big Ten. So why don't you just take it away, Steve?
Yeah, so we've been doing these conference realignment videos. We've been doing a lot on the Pac-12, how that affects the Mountain West. Mm-hmm. We wanted to come and give you guys an update. There's some on how things are affecting the Big Ten. There's some news in the ACC, some changes, a little bit of news, a little bit of buzz, a little bit of smoke out of the ACC. So I wanted to bring you up to date on how that's going to affect the Big Ten. Okay, so first of all, starting with the ACC, it's been revealed they have a competition clause in their contract with ESPN that states that they have to have 15 teams competing in the ACC in order to keep their contract going.
Okay.
Now, there is some legal debate whether that has to be in a specific 15 teams or any 15 teams. So there's been buzz for a while. The ACC is aware that there's certain teams, Florida State, Clemson, Miami, some other teams that are really looking to get out of the ACC. So they acted proactively, and they went ahead and grabbed and added a few weeks back. They added Stanford, Cal, and SMU.
Right.
So some people are like, what the heck? You have an Atlantic Coast Conference, and
right.
it's going to contain Stanford and Cal, both on the West Coast on the Pacific Ocean. But, at this point, it's survival moves.
Yep.
They wanted to make sure that they could make that legal argument that they're at 15 teams, even if they have these 3 teams that really want to leave, if they lose those teams. So let's start with Clemson. So Clemson this week, the big buzz, the big news, their board of trustees have been meeting. They've had they have official meetings scheduled. They have also had some unofficial meetings. Some things have been leaking out. So right now, the big fire, the big smoke is coming out of Clemson.
Okay.
Clemson, when one of their board of trustee members was asked, when are you guys leaving the ACC? Are you leaving? When are you leaving? And his answer was, it's going to be sooner rather than later. So they have a really important board meeting coming up in October. And the expectations from some is that the ACC is going to vote to leave, Clemson is going to vote to leave the ACC to pursue membership in either the Big Ten or SEC, possibly the Big 12, but most likely the Big Ten or the SEC.
Wow, okay.
So that's the fire, that's the smoke coming out of the ACC right now. That's burning the hottest.
So you're saying that potentially Clemson's going to say they're leaving without knowing where they're going?
Yes, that's the speculation that they know they want to go to either the Big Ten or the SEC.
Okay.
And the whole thought has been, because Florida State about a month or so ago, you had the same fire out of there, board of trustee members saying we need to get out of the ACC. This is a terrible conference for us financially.
Right.
We need to get out of here in order to compete with the programs from the Big Ten and the SEC. So the expectations is those really good ACC programs that are drawing the ratings are going to want to go to one of those two so that they can be on that same level financially.
Similar to what happened at the Pac-12.
Exactly. Okay. So we talked about Clemson. We talked about Florida State. So Florida State about a month ago, like we said, there was smoke coming out of their meeting as well, and the expectation is that they're ready to get out of Dodge as soon as possible. Okay. Now, there is one wrinkle as regards to the Big Ten with Florida State. Florida State is not an AAU member. Okay, AAU is an academic union, a large union of schools that share research money. It's academic research focused.
Right. Okay.
Research funding. They share funding. They share their research. The Big Ten has not invited somebody since the 1950s, Michigan State, that was not an AAU member. Okay. So my contacts at Penn State, I know there's some debate on this, and we talk about how money is so important. Well, the thing is AAU is academics, but it's academic money. Right. We're talking of billions of dollars in research money, that if that can be pooled and that can be shared, it's a massive windfall for the schools. Okay. And they want to keep that. The AAU membership, the Big Ten, it's important for them, for all of their members to be AAU members, because they're pooling their academic resources, their athletic resources. It's something that's important to the Big Ten, and my contacts at Penn State tell me that they are expecting Florida State to gain AAU membership within the next year or two, and that there is mutual interest between Penn State and Florida State. Okay. So that's the status on Florida State. Now, those are the big two. Those are the two that they've already expressed they want to get out. All right. Moving forward, My contacts at Penn State, and I've heard this some other places from people who have contacts at other Big Ten schools, is that after those two, the Big Ten's not exactly sure they're interested in Clemson. They don't fit the profile. They're very much interested in Florida State. Large flagship university, lots of research dollars. If they can just get that AAU membership, they will be the perfect candidate for the Big Ten. They're not so sure in Clemson. We'll see on that. Jury's out on that. I personally think that Clemson wants to go to the SEC. University of South Carolina is going to try and keep them out, but they'd be a great cultural fit in the SEC.
Yes, I was just going to say that.
Yeah, and so moving forward after those two schools, the number one target of the Big Ten is going to be North Carolina, UNC, University of North Carolina. They fit the academic profile. They're very, very well respected academically, high research school, AAU members. They're the Big Ten. Prior to adding those West Coast teams, they like to keep that contiguous Big Ten footprint. So this allows them to move down the East Coast. So UNC is going to be the top priority moving forward. That's what all my contacts tell me. Now, there might be a fight because right now UNC is signaling they would actually prefer to keep the ACC together. But if they do leave, a lot of indications are that both the Big Ten and the SEC are very much interested in UNC. That's the one school that there seems to be an overlap. Both conferences are interested. You have those growing markets, Charlotte, the Triangle, growing young markets, affluent markets in North Carolina. It would be a big prize. And the branding, North Carolina, Michael Jordan branding, all of that. So they meet all the criteria. They haven't been the best team on the field. So that's one detractor against them. But for the Big Ten, I don't think they care. And I think the SEC would be willing to take them because of the market and the branding.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're doing just fine this year.
They are. And they have a Heisman Trophy candidate.
So. And I think, obviously, you always have the name recognition with a UNC. But I think a UNC in either the SEC or the Big Ten gives them the conference that maybe they can draw some more players or some more athletes, to them than maybe what they can via an ACC. But
totally agree.
Speculation.
They'd be getting more money. They're playing against those big teams instead of playing against Wake Forest and Boston College. Who gets excited about that? If you're playing Penn State, you're playing Michigan, you're playing Ohio State, or you're playing Georgia, Alabama, Florida. Like that is going to be more exciting for home fans to want to go out and see those games.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So UNC. Again, all contacts, all indications point to the direction of that they're going to be the top prize that's going to be fought over after those first two initial teams bolt. All right, so the next one, and I mentioned this, I think, maybe on one other video, I'm not sure, but I'm going to go back to it. My contact at Penn State had been telling me for years that he didn't believe Miami was going to be a target for the Big Ten. They're a private school. They're maybe they're much smaller private school, or smaller than Florida or Florida State. They were not AAU members. However, this last year they gained AAU status with Notre Dame. That's huge for the Big Ten. And so what my contact at Penn State has told me, it's a complete game changer with Miami. Whereas before he thought near 0% chance they could ever get a bid. He now thinks that they have a good shot to get an invite, especially if they were part of a package deal with, let's say, Florida State. If the Big Ten was able to add Florida State and Miami together, that would really solidify them in those Florida markets. Makes a lot of sense. So I'm not saying that they're one of the top choices, the top candidates, but they went from 0% chance to they're a contender.
Let's take a look.
Game changer.
Well, and it reminds me, I mean, I'm probably always going to refer back to the Pac-12, and it's a little bit like the USC, UCLA. The Big Ten wanted USC. UCLA was kind of, I don't say an afterthought, but they tag teamed on that, and they got them both. Maybe a similar type of deal. I'm not saying, I mean, that was special because USC and UCLA have a history there. It certainly isn't necessarily the case with Florida State and Miami, but in terms of having the two schools in that general vicinity, it makes sense. If you're going to expand down into Florida, I think it makes sense. You have multiple schools down in that area, so that's it. Very interesting. Yeah,
absolutely. And they might not have the 100-year tradition that USC and UCLA have, but since 1990, they've been pretty good rivals and been high-ranked teams. So again, so I'm changing based on what I'm hearing from my contacts. I'm changing my perception of Miami. So they had no shot of getting in the Big Ten to now based on the game changer phrase that now they have a pretty good chance.
Okay.
So, all right. So the last thing that I want to talk about.
Yep.
Okay. So Notre Dame. That's always the elephant in the room.
I didn't know if you were going to bring them up or not.
Yeah. So Notre Dame. I still see Notre Dame's going to do everything they can to stay independent. So right now they have an affiliation with the ACC that all their other programs are in the ACC.
Right.
Football, they're still independent. They do have a scheduling agreement with the ACC. They play a certain amount of games with the ACC every year. However, they're still independent. They don't play in their championship game. So my contact at Penn State, who has been coordinating with NBC, with the producers and the people that kind of do the front work when they're coming and he's been talking to them, he's been coordinating with them, and so the buzz is that NBC really wants Notre Dame to play more Big Ten teams.
Okay.
And that's backed up. That's a rumor I got from a contact, but it is backed up by, if you look at ratings, you look at numbers, and you kind of see the smoke coming out of other areas. It's taken NBC longer, or Notre Dame longer to solidify that contract with NBC than a lot of people thought. That's drug on a while, and when you look at the numbers, there's one or two teams from from the ACC, maybe like Clemson and Florida State, that Notre Dame gets good ratings, but all those other teams, the ratings are totally terrible.
Right.
And their ratings when they're playing against Big Ten teams are through the roof generally.
Yeah. Well, there's been some history there.
Absolutely.
You need to go back a little bit, but there was a lot of history with Notre Dame and Penn State and Notre Dame,
Michigan.
Yes. So yeah,
I believe,
I know a lot of people were kind of upset and have been upset that history that had been there hasn't happened here for quite a while, quite frankly. So I think you'd have a lot of support, at least with the old heads. Yeah. And seeing that kind of renewed again.
Absolutely. And so with that, with the smoke coming, the ACC, it's a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. They're dead conference walking. Whether it takes till 2036 when their grant of rights runs out.
Right.
I will say, we've talked about the grant of rights before. So there are some legal theories out there that this competition clause basically is the poison pill for the grant of rights.
Okay.
Because we've added those 3 new teams, then some legal minds that are connected with Florida State and Clemson think that they can basically leave now,
right?
Because the ACC is still guaranteed to have their 15 teams.
Right.
The makeup changed, and they think that gives them a window. Which all you need is a little wiggle room, and you can press your case, and maybe come to a settlement or something like that. So definitely adding those 3 teams makes it more likely that some teams leave the ACC earlier. Okay. And if they do, if you see those power programs, if you see the Florida States and the Clemsons and Miami leaving, and UNC potentially leaving the ACC, why does Notre Dame want to stay there and play Boston College and Wake Forest? Like, it just, and NBC doesn't want that. That's their main partner. So I do think that all of these make it more likely that Notre Dame will move, and it may be where they join the Big Ten, or they may just replace the ACC with the Big Ten, where they place all their other sports, their Olympic sports, their basketball, everything in the Big Ten, and come up with some kind of scheduling agreement, which I could totally see that. If you have, let's say, a 20-team Big Ten plus Notre Dame, where Notre Dame plays 8 games a year against Big Ten opponents, 4 at home, 4 away, I could totally see that happening, and I think it's more and more likely that happens. And I think that it's significant. We talked about, you said how the Pac-12 people said this is the worst media environment to sign a new deal. All the other conferences have signed their new deal.
Yes.
Notre Dame is trying to get that deal across the finish line, and they are having pressure from their one media partner that wants them to play more Big Ten games. So I think that could be a game changer.
That could be.
Yeah. So that's pretty much that's pretty much it for the update.
Okay.
And I wanted to talk about those things that have been happening in the ACC, how they could potentially affect the Big Ten, and it all comes down to money, like we talked about before.
Yep.
So just a kind of a quick review. There's smoke out of Clemson that they're looking to leave. Potentially, I've seen possibly an October 15th announcement after their next board meeting that they are
about 3 weeks away.
Exactly. We've already had the smoke out of Florida State. Right. We've identified UNC after those as maybe the primary target.
Okay.
For expansion. Miami is a game changer. The AAU status, total game changer for Miami.
Okay.
And I definitely see with the pressure from NBC on Notre Dame that it makes them more likely with these other teams possibly leaving the ACC and them getting pressure from NBC that they could be moving towards the Big Ten, whether that means full membership or just kind of Dayton for a while. We'll see.
Okay.
So that's my update for the ACC and the Big Ten. What thoughts do you have, JY?
Yeah, I think that's exciting. All exciting stuff. Definitely, I think we're going to see a lot of changes here. This is probably just the beginning with the whole Pac-12 unraveling and what's occurred there. That might be the first step in multiple steps. And as you say, that the bringing those schools in, or two of the schools into the ACC, could now trickle up. I guess not trickle down, but trickle up in terms of pushing out a few schools that want to get out, and this would be the way they can do that. So, and you've mentioned before that the ACC is. Probably on, I don't say they're on borrowed time, but they could become the next Pac-12. They could become the next Pac-12 maybe sooner than anybody wants to think. I don't know that, but all really good stuff. Certainly is looking like you've got two powerhouse conferences here in the Big Ten and the SEC. And the Big 12 is doing fine.
Okay. Yep.
But the big get bigger and the little have to doggy paddle, and that's just the way it's going to be. And sometimes we talked about, for those that haven't been following our Pac-12 information, we talked about this whole relegation promotion type of thing, and we just talked about that on the last update that we had with the Pac-12 and the president of Washington State's comments on that. It's 4 or 5 years out, and B, you need the big boys to be a part of that.
Absolutely.
This isn't a mid to lower type of level. This is the SEC and the Big Ten that would have to be a part of a humongous promotion and relegation type of model. I don't see that happening. Obviously, I think both of those programs or those conferences are doing really, really well. I don't see them being interested, at least right now. But it's interesting to see how that would play out. It's really kind of a full college football model, not a 2 or 3 conference model.
Right. And when is that going to happen? Is that 2 years, 5 years, 12 years?
Exactly. Who knows?
So just kind of a quick, to kind of wrap things up, I would just say, before you take us out, I would just say, we're at the Big Mountain. We're going to be focused on the Mountain West and the Big Ten. But we are going to continue to update you on this conference realignment stuff. It really, we've done those videos, how the Pac-12 issues are affecting the Mountain West. So you can have huge changes for the Mountain West. The Big Ten is going to be affected by what goes on in the ACC. So come to us for picks and ice cold locks, but at the same time, we're going to keep you updated on conference realignment and expansion and how it affects the Big Ten and the Mountain West.
Yep, awesome. Hey, we thank you for tuning in. We'll keep doing these videos. We've had a great response so far. This is really our first kind of update to an ACC and Big Ten from our very original one that was several weeks ago. So great that we get back to some of the ACC Big Ten type of information. We've been really focused on the Pac-12. But we thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.